Welcome to Undercomplicating Stuff, where we, two psychologists and coaches with a combined 40 years of experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate different topics. Friendly reminder as we get started that these videos are meant for entertainment and conversational purposes only. If you were looking for more information or resources, please see the description below this video. Dr. Gedeon, do you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I'm Stacey Gedeon. I'm a health psychologist and founder of a healthcare consulting and professional coaching business. And how about you, Dr. Radico?
I'm Julie Radico, a psychologist, a coach, an author, and a speaker. And our question today is one that I'm sure anybody listening who has worked in the mental health profession has heard many times. And so I think it's such a great one that we're being asked to talk about. What might you notice in a loved one that would make you think they could benefit from therapy? What do you think?
Yeah, this is huge. And both, I think, professionally and even just in everyday life, people will approach people like you and me and kind of ask questions and um, get some suggestions on what to look for. And noticing is kind of a theme that we have in our videos, but noticing subtle signs, maybe they may not be obvious signs.
Mm.
And also knowing that the focus is to pay attention to what you're noticing versus jumping to a conclusion.
Mm.
And there are different levels really of concern. There might be that your basic everything's going fine, so we might call that, a green light or a green zone. When there are more urgent things, we might go into sort of an orange level where we're thinking, okay, they don't quite seem to be themselves and something seems to be a little bit off. And it progresses from there to sort of a danger zone, and we can kind
Mm.
of definitely get into that more. I'm wondering what are some maybe specific things that you would cue people in to notice about their
Mm.
loved one or the person that they care about?
Yeah. You make a fantastic point using like the green, yellow, orange, red sort of theme. Like think of a traffic light, and we've added in here this idea of like an orange because there's this subtle but important distinction that listeners have to make of where do I think the person that I care about, like, where do I think their functioning is right now? Is it doing totally fine? Is it maybe yellow where I'm slowing down and I'm thinking, huh, maybe this person is acting a little bit differently. Like maybe they're a little more snippy than usual. Like maybe when I say something, they kind of snap back at me, but they're not super angry or aggressive. They're just a little off. And so I'm in that yellow, slowing down, trying to think about like, hmm, oh, but maybe something's off. And then that starts to trickle into what you're talking about, like Stacey, with this like orange sort of like, oh no, okay, wait, now they are getting more angry, or they're like secluding themselves. They're not talking to me hardly at all anymore. And then that can lead to the like red zone of stop, do
Yeah.
not pass go, do not collect $200. Like everybody stop with everything. And like this person might not be safe. Like maybe we're concerned that they're hurting themselves in some type of way. And so I think it's a fantastic analogy. And it's such a tricky thing to know as a loved one, as like not a mental health professional. And that's why we get these questions a lot, like as psychologists, as coaches, how do I talk to a loved one? How do I know if a loved one, like, is it just me? Am I thinking? Or how do I know if they really need this help?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a judgment call based on you knowing that person and knowing that you know them pretty well.
Great points. The irritability that may be enhanced and that just
Mhm.
seems sort of off. And I know one thing that you really emphasize is sort of your spidey senses
Mhm.
and noticing that things just may seem off. And it could be things like headaches, sleep disturbance, appetite changes, those behaviors and physiological changes that, again, are subtle. We all have times when things are a little bit off,
Mm.
but if there's a pattern, if it's lasting, if it's pervasive, persistent, it's something that we then want to be paying attention to. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think you make a fantastic point. And sometimes it's this question of, is it a blip? They just lost their job. They just, had an accident in their car. They just like something just happened in their life that they're reacting to. And is it okay? I need to give them the grace to let them adjust to that and to support them just more than I normally would, knowing that, yeah, if I ask them about, hey, how's job searching going? And they are not in the emotional space to hear that question, then you might get a snippy answer. You might, sometimes they might be in a place where they're like, oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, I've been doing this. And other times they might be like, I'm now feeling a bunch of shame and guilt and like I'm not doing enough. And you are going to get my sort of anger as a protective factor of like, well, why are you asking me that? Leave me alone. Like, is it something that's just happened in their life
Mm.
and you're being aware of like keeping tabs on that of if it persists too long or becomes too dysfunctional that then you're like, oh, maybe this person could benefit from therapy. Or is it something that, without any seemingly outside impacts, this person's just starting to behave differently. And there's an argument as I say this, even that like even if something like just has happened, that person just lost their job, there's a fair argument to be made of preemptively going into therapy and having somebody
Mm.
to talk to, even if you feel like they're coping okay with it. Therapy is a tool to help add more strategies and,
Mhm.
skills to your toolbox that you then have for yourself. So I think there's a lot of really important gradation here for people
Mhm.
to consider when they're thinking about, oh, does my loved one need therapy? Like what should I keep an eye out for? There's no perfect if they've checked these three boxes, unless it's a red zone, and then you're like, yep, Stacey, you and I both hands down, we're like, boxes are checked, get that person support. If it's like yellow, maybe even some of the orange, like mm, it's not a perfect we have the equation that we can give you that, this equals definitely they need therapy this second.
And to add to that, I don't know if you've had the experience where either ourselves or people that we're working with will think back to their loved one and think, "Oh my gosh, why did I not see that? That was so
Mhm.
obvious looking back." And it's important to not beat yourself up over that because for some people, these changes happen over time very slowly and subtly. Or they people might be really good at hiding what they're struggling for a variety of reasons. And it may not be as obvious at the time when you're in it as it might be down the road looking back on it. And
Mhm.
again, the importance of having that self-compassion and knowing that we don't always have an insight into what our loved ones are experiencing and
Mhm.
coming to it with curiosity and compassion to learn more and to see where that person might be in their functioning. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. It makes me think of, I imagine everybody listening to this has done this, where you have engaged in activity that seemingly was
Mm.
pretty harmless with somebody, and then maybe down the line that activity stopped being harmless for that person, and you're like, oh, I never would have predicted that. Like maybe when you were, in your early 20s, you went out drinking with a friend, like pretty routinely. That's how you spent your time. You would meet up at a bar, watch a game, like and now that person you might be thinking, hey, I think they need help with their drinking. I think
Mm.
they need therapy services for their drinking. And you might have all these questions of how did I or did I contribute to that
Mm.
along the way? And we can't own what other people do, right? Like we do not have the power enough, no matter how much influence you think you have over somebody else's life, you often, there might be some caveats here, but like you are not the person who has convinced them that they are going to create this drinking habit that becomes problematic. We can have those doubts though, as you're saying, of like, if I look at this over time, I used to do this with that person. Like, did I help enable them to create this pattern? And there's a million different examples of things that can become harmful or not healthy for people that we do pretty routinely as like, social types of
Right.
things that it's it's important to trust your gut and trust your knowledge of that person and how you think they're coping to know whether or not they need help.
Yes, and as you mentioned earlier, it's not our or your role or our role if we're not in a professional setting to diagnose and
Mm,
do all of these other things or to label it. It's just about noticing patterns that seem to be impacting someone's functioning for an extended period of time.
mm.
And catching it early, if I were to think about a takeaway, noticing as early as you can without catastrophizing or jumping to conclusions is really, really helpful, I think, in the long run. And you may find you notice something for a few days or a week, and then the behaviors or the concerns or the patterns that you see cease to exist. And okay, well, that was something that was different, but it does not seem to be continuing. Or you may need to check back because perhaps the person is better at hiding what they were exhibiting before, indicating that they may need help.
For key takeaways to build on what we've been talking about, two thoughts come to mind. I imagine listeners might be going, well, wait, what are the red, like, flag kinds of like what's the when the signal gets to red, what are those things? Um, if you are ever concerned that a person's actions or inactions is going to lead to harm to themselves or to others,
Yes,
and that's broad in a way, purposely, like think about, oh, if this person you know, they might not be thinking clearly enough where they're not safe while they're driving
sure.
or operating heavy machinery, like while they're, being a home alone by themselves. If you're concerned about their safety to a level, that's you're in the red zone. And that's a good time to, if it's like true crisis, you're like, this person I don't think is going to make it through the next hours, 911, like 988 is the suicide crisis hotline, but also take them to the local emergency room. If that person appears to be in an unhealthy pattern where they're harming themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, even if those patterns benefit other people, that is a good indicator to that like consider this person might need therapy. A person will be so giving of themselves, so draining themselves, like
Mm,
to a point where they are doing everything for everybody else. And they're when you realize that they're just like not holding it together. They hold it together for everybody else maybe, and then that's even starting to crumble and
mm,
they're missing important things, or you had set up, oh hey, we were gonna do lunch, and then they cancel repeatedly. Like there's these
mm,
signs that this person is not able to take care of themselves, even if that means that they are still functioning enough for other people, like they're going to work. We hear the idea of like functioning,
right,
fill in the
right.
blank. That still can be a really important sign that they are not functioning.
Yeah.
They like it is that's a you might want to think about the fact that they could benefit from some therapy. And we will have another video in the near future that will talk about, well, how do you actually have that
Mm.
conversation? So stay tuned.
Yeah.
And if this topic resonated with you, please share it with somebody that you care about. Also, please comment, like, and subscribe. You can message us on YouTube or LinkedIn with suggestions of questions that you'd like us to address in the future.